Much of the footage you're about to see was smuggled out of Nigeria at great personal risk. This video is edited for length from two fine films made by Katma Films called Delta Force and In Remembrance, Ken Saro. In Nigeria, 250 ethnic groups are dominated by just three: the Ariba, the Igbo, and the Hausa, who control the army. Since independence from Britain, a succession of Nigerian dictators have been sustained by oil, 50% of which is produced by Shell. This oil accounts for 14% of Shell's global profits and provides the military regime with $11 million a day. Over 35 years, Ogoni land has yielded about $40 billion in oil revenue. However, most of the people are living in poverty.
Even though I was young, I could see that nothing was coming to the Ogoni people from the oil. And I started writing about it almost immediately, even though I was only a high school student at the time. This spill has been going on for the last 6 weeks. This sort of pollution, to live with it in an area where land is in very high demand, is completely destructive of the community. What we are working on now is crude oil, not soil. This land is lost forever. For the next 1,000 years, nothing is going to grow here.
In Ogoni, we had the leadership in the person of Ken, who motivated the people. We had the organization like MOSOP that was the first of its kind in that part of the world, grassroots democracy, trying to mobilize all segments of the people.
In early 1993, the movement became fully mobilized with 300,000 people taking part in peaceful marches in all 6 kingdoms.
The United Nations recognizes the rights of all the world's indigenous people. Indigenous people have been cheated through laws such as are operated in Nigeria today. We are going to demand our rights peacefully, non-violently, and we shall win. From today onwards, Shell is declared persona non grata in Ogoni.
For the first time, peaceful protests forced Shell out of the area. A tiny ethnic group had defied the largest army in Africa and one of the biggest companies in the world. Widespread rioting broke out across Nigeria during the summer of 1993 when a promise of a return to civilian rule was broken by the dictator Babangida. He announced a crackdown on all pro-democracy activists, including the Ogonis. Ogoni was surrounded, villages were blocked in by military checkpoints and attacked. Over 800 people were slaughtered.
Tata du sac do toilelo lo ni elenande lo ne na nizia comme le do na lo ni do toma do nane.
In the autumn of 1993, there were further brutal attacks on 10 Ogoni villages, which resulted in the deaths of 750 people and left 30,000 homeless. The time had come to silence this eloquent and outspoken critic. Exactly 3 weeks later, Abacha's henchmen seized Saro. 4 prominent Ogoni chiefs had been murdered in an alleged mob riot and burned to death in this car. One victim was a relative of Saro. The military accused Saro of inciting the attack, even though security agents had prevented him from entering Ogoni land earlier that day. Ken Saro-Wiwa and 14 colleagues were held without charge for 9 months in a military camp under appalling conditions. The trial finally began in February of 1995.
The Nigerian government did, quite cynically in my view, was to take this trial away from the ordinary Nigerian courts and to put it in front of a so-called civil disturbances tribunal, consisting of 2 judges and a military officer. Those 3 people were personally appointed by the dictator of Nigeria, Abacha.
As a lawyer, Mite attempted to defend himself, but was continually blocked by the tribunal.
Those are opportunities for explanation. So I feel that
is that at this stage you cannot do so.
A number of the main witnesses for the prosecution have admitted to being bribed to discredit Saro.
Ken wanted to put in before the tribunal a long 40-page statement of denial of his guilt. The tribunal said, we're not going to look at that if you're not giving evidence. When they came to give their judgment, they pretended, and there's no other word for it, that Ken Saro hadn't challenged any of the prosecution evidence, so they could take it all as being true without even having to think about whether it was or not.
Despite Shell's efforts, during the summer protests intensified. It was at this time that the head of Shell Nigeria, Brian Anderson, held private meetings with Owens Nwiwa in Lagos.
And I asked him again about my brother and the other detainees for their freedom. And he said that it would be difficult to get their release, but not impossible. He said that he needs some goodwill from the Ogoni people, from Masop, for that to happen. So I asked him what was the goodwill. He asked that we should call off the international campaign.
Dr. Nwiwa says he passed on this offer to Ken Saro-Wiwa, who wrote back that it was time for Shell to show goodwill rather than the Ogoni.
no possibility whatsoever that
I or Mossad could ever have planned any such action. And I will forever vow it, no matter what any forum decides upon. I appeal to you, my Lord, for only one thing. The Ogoni people have suffered tremendously in this country. They have made tremendous contributions to this country. Niger Delta itself is in serious trouble. We need every assistance that we can get.
On the 31st of October, the Ogoni 9 were found guilty and sentenced to death. Despite worldwide appeals for clemency, on November the 10th, 1995, Ken Saro-Wiwa and the 8 other Ogonis were taken to Port Harcourt Prison and hanged by the neck.
I urge all of you here to keep the pressure on Shell to accept the responsibility for what is happening in Ogoni and what is still happening. Solidarity forever! Solidarity forever!
Thing that always gladdens one's heart is the spirit, the irrepressible spirit of the Ogoni people, to continue to believe in this struggle in spite of all odds. And that is the thing that drives all of us on.
The struggle itself is about hope. If I didn't think that there was hope in the future, I would not be fighting. I would not be encouraging anybody to struggle the way we are doing now. Yes, there must be hope. It's a rich land. It's well blessed. If we can get the oppressors out of the way, if we can get those practicing double standards out of the way, if we can get the pollution to stop, I am sure that Ogoni will be a happy land.
Bene Ogoni, Bene Ogoni,